Wow, California is really going nuts. They're taking voted to take a Chick-fil-A off a campus, the most liberal state in the country for sure. Extremely anti-Christian. Um, I saw on Fox News an article. California okays new sex ed guidelines for teachers despite objections from parents, protesters. California Department of Education approved controversial sex education guidelines for public school teachers Wednesday that encourage classroom discussions about gender identity and LGBT relationships, but removed 5 resources and books, including one that explains sex to students as young as kindergartens. LGBT advocates praised the new recommendations for giving attention to a community that is often left left out of sex education policies. Article goes on. You see parents here holding up signs, too much too soon. This is absolute insanity. Seriously, parents, get Christians, get your kids out of public schools. I mean, God's word teaches you got to train your kids in the way, in God's way, and public schools have become extremely, extremely anti-Christ. I want you to take a look at this video from the Dr. Duke show. California shocking sex ed guidelines. Now, take a listen to this. This is not too long.
All of the ways that California is appropriating from parents and taking parental prerogative away. They have decided, California, we know they can't teach their kids how to read. We know they can't teach literacy. We know they can't teach college-ready math. But they are now comprehensively going to teach your kids under a new proposed health advisory curriculum. They're going to begin to teach really radical things. Alex, take a moment and lay out the situation.
Yeah, this health education framework, as they're referring to this abomination, it basically starts sexualizing and confusing the children beginning in kindergarten, right? We broke the story at Freedom Project a few months ago when these were just a draft policy document that was being discussed. They recommend a book for 5-year-old children that teaches them that there are infinite genders. They can be neutral or agender or pangender or neutral spirit, all these kinds of wacky ideas. And for kindergartners, right? They're telling the kindergartners, you might have been born in the wrong body. You might actually be a girl in a boy's body. From the youngest ages possible, teaching them things that are just unspeakable, that you can't even talk about here. And it gets progressively worse, if you can imagine. By the time they're in middle school, they need to know about polyamory, where these are sexual relationships involving multiple partners. Once they get to high school, they're going to learn about fisting and every conceivable perversion you can think of, and then many that you can't think of. Right? I had to look up some of these terms because they're just so out there. This is stuff that even 5 years ago would have been completely unthinkable. And so this is what's coming in California and America. You should prepare yourself because this is coming to Oklahoma and Montana and rural Tennessee and everywhere in between.
We are having no moral judgments whatsoever. And this is where we saw last week, a couple weeks ago, Alex, pedophilia, when we recognized that a particular school superintendent was arguing that teaching pedophilia, that being sexually attracted to children is just another form of sex. We had a superintendent actually say that.
Answer me why you're teaching pedophilia in school to 9th graders.
Teaching what?
Pedophilia, pederosity, right here.
I've explained to you that this is done because we are talking about historical perspectives of how gender relations and different types of sexual orientations have existed in history.
And we had the school district who wanted to argue with us, admit that they had to pull aspects of pedophilia out of their curriculum. So without getting any more into the really disgusting weeds of all of this, talk more about the framework for our moms and dads. It's not law, but it's 700 pages.
Yeah, well, I think they make this deliberately confusing, Duke. So they have something called the Healthy Youth Act that was passed a few years ago that mandates the teaching of certain things. So this mandates, for example, the teaching of LGBT people as heroic historical characters in history class. Some of them actually homosexuals or transgender. Harvey Milk, for example, is one of the big heroes they build up, the first openly homosexual elected official in America. Also happened to be a child rapist who raped children, some of whom, these boys, went on to go commit suicide later. So, of course, Obama had to name a Navy ship after him. Great guy to build up as a hero in the minds of middle school children, high school children, elementary school children. And then they just go back retroactively and just declare that certain people must have been homosexual because they didn't get married, or because there's no evidence that they were attracted to women, and so they must have been homosexual. So this part is mandated. There's no opt-out mechanism. The children are required to sit through this. The parents cannot opt them out. Then this health education framework. This is supposed to be kind of guidance, right? So the school districts are all expected to adopt something that complies with this, but it's not technically law. And so what you have is the school districts have options. Do you want poison A, poison B, or poison C? It's all poison, and you still have to drink some poison, but you get a little bit of choice in terms of what poison you're going to drink.
We're going to start telling 5-year-olds that they may be in the wrong body, that they have to take an inventory of themselves at age 5 and ask themselves if they really are the boy they are born to be, or maybe there's something else. This is suggestive. This is indoctrination. This is brainwashing, for lack of a better word. It's developmentally inappropriate. But the argument here is, you've got all the laws now, right, that mandate teaching of this, teaching of that, as you said, mainstreaming gay and lesbian heroes from kindergarten, all that. That's law. And if you're going to make a law that says you have to mainstream all these different forms of sexual experimentation, then the guidance just tells them how to implement the law. There is no getting around this.
I think one of the best Christian atheist debates, and it actually happened in California, was, if you go on YouTube, they call it Epic Debate on God's Existence, and it was Jeff Durbin, Cy Ten Bruggencate were on the Christian side. It was 3 Christians versus 3 atheists, and wow, that was a real good victory for the Christian side. I would highly recommend that. This is absolute insanity. I can't understand the projectile, the tactics of the left. They call the other side Nazis, and they're truly the Nazis. I mean, how can you not see the parallels between the 1940s Nazis and Democrats today? I said this before. It's only the only difference is the way they dress and their intentions. They're committing a Holocaust against babies. They're fascists wanting to sue people, make laws to sue people for not calling someone by a preferred gender pronoun. That's already been happening in the UK and so on. They're totalitarians, and they are indoctrinating kids militantly. This is absolute sexual child abuse, what's going on with the kids in public schools. The loonies have taken over the asylum. It's absolutely unbelievable. People don't understand how serious God is. And, there's in Revelation 6, talks about the second coming of Jesus. I looked when he broke the 6th seal, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth made of hair, and the whole moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth as a fig tree casts its unripe figs when shaken by a great wind. The sky was split apart like a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Then the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the commanders, and the rich, and the strong, and every slave and free man hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, and they said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, which is Jesus, Revelation explains. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? People are going to be so afraid when Jesus returns, they would rather have rocks fall on them to hide them from his presence. The left, the left is absolutely full-blown Nazi, full-blown totalitarian, antichrist, baby-murdering fascists. And these are the kind of people that are in charge of the public schools. And they are indoctrinating your kids to believe their antichrist ideologies. And I highly recommend get your kids out of public schools. I mean, seriously. It's pretty bad now. I mean, I'm not even that old, and things weren't even, not even close to this bad when I was going to school. But yeah, I make these, one of the reasons I make these videos is to make people aware of some of the things that are going on. So thanks for listening.